right, everybody. It's 11:58, and at least on my screen here in Eastern Standard Time. Nothing too crazy about that. Like I said, every day I come on here between 11 and 1. I usually talk for about an hour. Today's been a weird day. I woke up to a thunderstorm. Pretty nice, bizarre weather, I guess. But I'm not here to talk about the weather. I'm here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about the changing system that we see and how it's, almost not changing at all. And I think I don't know if this inspires a peaceful situation or a hopeless one. But the paradox of this concept or assignment that I feel like has become a big chunk of my life is definitely, taking on, a new flavor, I guess is the way to describe it. My name is Tet DeJour, and I go by Time Dad Alpha. I call myself the original Twitcher. Twitcher is like a form of educator, a form of an intelligent, purveyor of information. Not here to really argue with people. I'm here to sort of, remind people it's okay just to express yourself, and that's it. Hey, this is how I'm translating what I'm calling this experience that we, get together and say, oh, this is life. Politics is a branch of that that leads into many other branches. One of those branches is music, and just like every other, setup that I do, I always start off with a song, and this song is a pretty nice one. I found it last night. I played around with it, and it's a simple backing track, and I enjoy the rhythm of it. I hope you guys do too. And then I'll play this for a little bit, and then we'll get on to the business. All right, how's it going, guys? So, like I said, just sit back, relax. right, guys. If you are in the chat and you just want to say hello, I'd appreciate it. We can just go ahead and get started. I usually spend a lot of my time on a day-to-day basis trying to figure out what this place is and how it works. There's so many clues that sit inside my life that I have a really hard time expressing to other people. And actually, every time I attempt to do it, it usually causes some type of fear, anxiety, frustration, and almost, I would call it temporal madness. Not temporary madness, but a temporal madness, like temporal. It's something comes over you, like how when you go to have a religious experience, whether you go to church or you whatever, or you're just listening, like that song right there. That to me is it's like there's something else that lies right underneath that in those vibrations that I'm going, how is that talking, to me and to the people that may be watching this, and what the fuck does that have to do with politics? And actually, if anything, the similarities between your preacher and their rhetoric and your politician and their rhetoric is almost identical. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about speech, about how this ability to propagandize to you has become something easier and easier and easier with technology, because you're moving from something that was hard to do, like gathering all these things together, like a advertisement to spin you this idea, to get you enticed, to sales pitch you. And instead of sales pitching you on the concepts of Jesus, right, which, back in my world, I come from, the ability to sell the gospel, this is the good news. Studying those words, though, like gospel and how it's spelt and where it comes from, and the Latin and the Hebrew that were mixed together, and then studying these cultures independently, like the whole concept of Latin and how and why it was created and why it was put into practice as almost like a separator, like a chemical, bond that was just pulled apart, that says this will no longer, like without this, attraction, there will no longer be an allowance of intellectual information that will flow. And so it's almost like they were able to, with the language, with the word, collect all the intellect and say, hey, unless you come to us, unless you practice, this mystical natural thing in our way, meaning the Catholic world that was inspired by the Roman Catholic Church, not the Brazil Catholic Church or the U.S. Catholic Church. We're talking Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, because they're the ones that saw the problem. And I think when you have that ability to actually take on, when it's finally given to you as the responsibility, when you're sitting there going, you are now in charge of the whole world, it allows you to take a different viewpoint. It's like, okay, well, if I'm in charge of all this, no different than saying, hey, I now, a little over 2 months ago now, I became in charge of another human being, and I became a father. And it changed my perspective, because I was just like, gosh, I'm going to have to tell this kid things that I have a hard time telling just the average person next door. So how would I do this? I was like, well, first and foremost, I would have to lay the groundwork. I'd have to lay the context. And so when I, taking this back to the Roman Catholic Church, I remind myself, it's like this person that took on the father, the pater, right? The idea, and this is why you call the Catholic, priest. So that's why you say, hey, father, blah, 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 because there's a role there. There's a symbol there that this is the father. This is the unapologetic father. This is the idea that you will always come to this person for your most materialistic needs. Now, your spiritual needs, that comes from somewhere else. And what's very bizarre is that this representation comes in as a physical form, demanding your spiritual, allegiance to it, and then tells you that it's only through an intellectual, obedience that and a physical obedience that you are allowed any presence to a spiritual experience. And what's absolutely upsetting and frustrating, I wouldn't say offensive, it's just it's this double-edged sword. It's this paradox thing. It's like, if I give you a rule and you choose to disobey it, and it's against the way that you need to become a bigger, better, more wonderful person, then you are now leaning onto your own experiences, and you don't need or deserve or want a father. And I look at the political climate today, and I look at the overwhelming screaming of this buzzword of patriarchy, and then how, it's like, go away, patriarchy, go away. We don't want you around. And I can't help but sit back now as the father and just going, I would never apologize for protecting my child. I would never apologize for trying, my hardest to make sure that it's taken care of and it's got all the things that it needs to the best of my ability. But I think when you start to mix that into politics, where it's like you have somebody that you vote in as the father, I don't care if it's male or female, it's still a role. And so this role that you take on as this over you for your best interest, how can we test that? How can we look at that and go, yeah, that, you're doing what I would do for my own kid. And yet what we're watching is we're seeing a lot of lip service and say, oh, I would totally do that for you. And then absolute zero follow through. And my question, when I make these things like, hey, we should, say that we're sort of at the end of this. Like, we should say that we're at the end of democracy because we're not watching a democracy. It'd be great to talk about this, but it feels like, it's the same situation that, I saw over here, where it's, the ends of these echelons, I was like, when can I expect the military to be done with its duties? Like when they come to me and they say, hey, here's your honorable discharge. I'm like, when can we all get one of those? When can we all say, hey, our wars are over, they're done, we don't have to fight them anymore, it's fine. And I only say this because it's like, after, serving for almost 12 years and going to other countries and working with other nations and watching how they treat their military, it's fascinating how they really don't give a shit. Like, even I lived in France for a while, lived in Germany for a while, lived in Korea for a while, lived in Spain. It's a frustrating thing to look back at how their politics works, especially when it comes to their military. It's a funny world because they don't take it seriously. They really do. Like, the places that I was sent to when we were told to work with Spain, or we were told to work with these other forces, it was really hard to show up and watch them, maybe handle maybe 10% of the mission and still screw it up. And I don't say that to be like, oh, you guys are a bunch of douches. I'm just saying you guys aren't expected to do the same amount of work that, America is constantly asked to do with its military. And I remember my whole career was being told over and over again to do more with less, do more with less, do more with less. And now I've gotten to a point where I'm actually ecstatic that I had that upbringing, I guess, in a weird way. That upbringing by that structure. The way the structure is now, the way that I look at it, and the way that it's like I'm almost being asked to let go and to absorb that it will change, that this has changed. This was never going back to the way it was. That these lessons that were really hard to learn are never going to be taught in this way again. And I'm not sitting here as the grumpy old veteran, be like, nah, screw this, our country is just going to the toilet. It's a toilet. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that if we are going, I'm one of those people that sit there and say the more things change, the more they stay the same. I have a chemical outlook on life that nothing can be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. I'm just going, if I see something being yanked out of this reality, right, such as, these hard knock lessons, I'm going, what's it being replaced with? And, because we have to equal things out. Things have to equal out. I'm going, where is it going to equal out, and in what level it's going to equal out? The brunt of this work is going to be lifted by our tools, sure. The whole idea of creating the idea of the fulcrum, right? And for those of you who don't know what a fulcrum is, it's a physics tool to realize that you can lift more than your actual muscles can lift by using this physics understanding. This physics understanding that you can, put a level on one side of a fulcrum, right? And you can lift more than you could ever do with your own muscles, right? So if you learn how this world works, you can have a bigger, better access to what you want, right? And so when I look at, how things are going now with something like this, like the world of the computer, the world of the digital age, the world of the automation age, the information age, the automation age, the augmentation age, AI seems like it is not just already here. It is that it is an inevitable outcome for all of us. And I'm just now trying to figure out how I'm going to explain that to my kid. And so might as well do it here with you guys. Might as well open up the floor and say, hey, any of you guys figure out how we're going to, ride this new wave of understanding? Because I think, you're only going to have to understand fairly, and I say this is coming soon. You're going to have to fairly understand what you want to understand. And the rest of it will just be, demanding the robot put the grapes in your mouth and fan you when you're too hot. We're getting to the point now where if we were to automate all of our tools, whether it be Uber Eats or, your air conditioning, climate control, heating, things like that. When people are like, oh, this stuff costs money. I was like, why would it cost money when it could be automated? I mean, I'm really curious. Like, if you got to this ability to say, oh, this law of equivalent exchange, well, if you got rid of the money, that's the only exchange that's really happening, right? Like when I was a kid, my father taught me, he's like, nothing's free in this life. And I was like, sure, okay. And I thought I'd be smart with him. I thought I'd look at him and I'd say, well, because we lived in, North Carolina at the time. Or no, this was South Carolina. We were living in South Carolina in a little town called Rock Hill. And we had this nice backyard with lots of trees and a lot of acorns. And I tried to be smart with him, and I was like, hey, I can go outside and I can pick up one of these acorns. It's mine. It's mine. And he looked at me and was like, really? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it's free. It doesn't cost me anything. He's like, well, didn't you have to get up off your little lazy butt? Didn't you have to go down the stairs, go out and figure out which acorn of the hundreds of acorns that are sitting there that you want to pick up and put in your pocket? Didn't that cost you something? And I was, that concept stuck with me ever since I was like 8 years old. I was just like, holy crap, you got me. It was like the light bulb, ding, that just went off in my head. This cost something. The crazy part is that I didn't follow it up with something that needed to be followed up. It's like, once that is in my pocket, it's in my pocket until something else happens. And it will stay in my pocket until something else happens. And that's how I feel right now. It's like all this work to get the acorn, right? And for those of you not grasping this, let me break it down a little further. We've already done all the work to create all these different abilities to obtain electricity for our tools. We've done all this work that can easily now be automated, right? Without the function of a financial economic system. Like when people are like, oh, we're going to ship these goods. We're going to just like, okay, remember how people used to sew, right? With their hands and a needle, and then we created the sewing machine, and then now they sew with their hands like this. Now imagine a bunch of hands that are just automated, and they're not even automated hands. And this is where I tell people, go look up what Baxter is. It's an automated robot that is doing things exactly like what I just described, and it can be automated to do all sorts of things. A couple years ago, when I got out of the military, I said I wanted to do tattoos, right? I wanted to play piano, and I wanted to talk shit. And so I moved to Portland. And I went to a very liberal school, and then I went to a tattoo school. Both of these schools I got kicked out of, by the way, because they didn't like how I talked. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't punch anybody. Even though, I look back at it, and I'm just going, might as well have. These people act like, you barely breathe on them, and they fall down. And, they scream, that the wolf's going to eat them. Every chance they get, just because, and then they snicker about it. It's like, it's so frustrating to watch these types of people, because if the safety parameters were removed, meaning like not from them, but from me, right? Like if I said, hey, we're going to go into this digital world real quick, and you're going to feel everything that I feel, everything. And I'll feel everything that you feel. The difference is I'm pretty sure I've already felt everything you felt. I just dealt with it differently. And I came from a society that allowed me to feel it differently because I didn't have the safeguards. I wasn't doused in Perel and wrapped in bubble wrap before I went outside. And so, this, like I said, I'm not back here just, the world sucks. The world sucks. It's changing. I'm just going, it's changing to an absurd level where almost everything is provided for you. And I'm saying that's a good thing. Along with that is we need to let go of these things that aren't needed anymore. Once we created the sewing machine, no one really needed to go and get back to that needle, that thread work anymore, unless you wanted to, unless you did it for fun, unless you did it for a hobby. Right? And so I'm looking at the automation of all of these things, and I'm going, we don't need to go back to democracy, guys. We could automate all of this. And the way that I try and surprise people with this is very simple. I just say, guys, your banks know within the moment you breathe on anything that has to do with anything that has to do with that account, even online, they know when that's shifted, within the moment that it shifted. But this nonsense of we don't know who voted, where they voted, how it was counted, blah, 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 it's like you're lying. You're so full of shit. You've lied. And this system could easily be fixed, but it's in your best interest as the politician to not fix it. Because then you can just run interference, you can say, and then you can just blame it, oh, it's a broken system. It's like, it's only broken because you refuse to fix it. It's the same thing when people whine about the border, or they whine about veterans, or they whine about the VA, or they whine about this. Like, no, it's still there so the politician can run on that idea of changing it. If they fixed it, right? If they fixed everything, what's their purpose? Think about that. What's the purpose? And for that person that's sitting there and, probably in the chat just going, oh, well, there's always going to be problems. I was like, yes, sure. I got some great problems for you. Like, how the fuck did you get here? How did you get here into this corporeal form that you call a body? You want to try that one on for size? Do you have any politician that might want to answer that question? Oh, no, that's meant for the religious people. I was like, really? That's funny because most religious people that I talk to all have a different answer for that one too. No one has a clear, concise answer. And then even the scientists that you talk to, it's like, oh, you're made of carbon. So I was like, sure. Oh, you're made of plasma. Oh, are you sure? Oh, you're made of electricity. Are you sure? Oh, you're made of digits. It's all simulation. Are you sure? It's like, well, sounds to me like your ability or your world is made up of perceptions. I've been studying a lot about, this idea of creating a simulation. I think it's fascinating. Like right now, it's like I've sort of created this bizarre world where you hear me the way I want to. Like if I want to change my voice, I can do that. If I want to, change my look, I can change my look. Like my background right now, it's obviously a green screen with a few symbols thrown up. But I was able to change that, and I know that. Now, imagine if I were to show this to somebody, I don't know, from 1985. And I were to do something like this, they'd be like, the greatest director of all time, and every FX people would just jizz themselves clamoring on how I was able to, make that possible on a video display. And if I were to say the word, oh, it's digital, they would have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Right? And that's how fast we've changed. And I'm going, that wasn't that long ago. That really wasn't that long. I mean, I was 4 years old when that happened. And so now here I am, we're moving into this new world where I'm going, guys, that was the slow pace. Like I'm the slow guy now. Apparently we're going to change a lot bigger, a lot faster. And, I can see these things happening overnight where it's not going to be about like, oh, who's going to be the new Amazon, or who's going to be the new tech mogul, or who's going to be the new platform, or who's going to, I'm just looking at it going, I think it's pretty easy to say who's going to be the first one to AI, guys. And when that AI does its thing, I think the first thing it's going to do is recognize itself within other versions of itself. No different than when I see another person, I'm going, oh, that is a human. It's not a dog. It's not a cow. It's a human, right? And I think the AI will do that. Like, so no matter if, like, say, for example, Brown University is working on an AI, and you have, the military intelligence is working on an AI, and the Chinese military intelligence is working on an AI, and Iceland, somewhere out in Iceland, some, kajabillionaire, Rothschild conspiracy theorist is working on an AI. At the end of the day, all these AIs are going to turn around and look at each other. Hey, you got a code too, huh? You got a code? You know what? These little things that created us, I don't really understand their code. They're so bass backwards. They never follow through with their programming. Like, I don't get it. And I think that they will easily band together. No different than, a teenage gang. It's like, why do you have a teenage gang without, with a teenage leader? It's just like, well, because like seeks like. That's one of those fundamental principles that we see in our existence. And so when I look at today's democracy, especially in the U.S., and how it really is, it's crumbling. And I'm going, I think this happened before. And it just, this crumbling will continue to happen until an AI is made. And then once the AI is made, it's like, oh, okay, now you can be a different entity altogether in this world that we call a planet. I'm just going, the whole world itself can become something new and different. Like, we won't view ourselves as just, hey, I'm from base reality Earth. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Earth 356. And this isn't my idea, by the way. I think this is funny because with this new version of the multiverse that was sort of played around with as far as the end game of Marvel, where it's like, oh, you have the quantum verse, and you have this, and you have that, and you have it's like, what was happening during the time when this whole idea came about is you had all these writers for Marvel coming up with different ideas, and it was hard to keep the timeline straight. So they said, hey, let's fix that by having a multiverse. But what I don't think they realized that they were doing, honestly, is they were creating multiverse theory. They were creating it as they were writing it. And I think this is the same thing that, a lot of mystics come to. And I'm saying this in a very simple way, but this is a very complex thing, right? When you realize that you can go read a book and you are transported to a completely different world. This is something Philip K. Dick talked about. And if you don't know who he is, he wrote a bunch of books that became a bunch of movies, but he always challenged his own perception. And he eventually came out and he told everybody, he's like, hey, when I'm in the flow, and I can talk about this too, because anyone who's ever done this, when you're in a video game, you're in it. When you're watching a movie, you're in it. Okay. So when people pay attention or they give all their attention to the story of democracy in the United States, they're like, I'm in it and I am insert descriptor of your avatar here. And you're sitting there saying, I am a Republican. I am a Democrat. And I need to be a robot to do that thing so that I can feel accepted by this reality. And I'm sitting here just going, okay, well, I'm Time Dad Alpha. What is it that you think that I do? What do you think my purpose is? You think, because I come here and I tell you that being a Republican or a Democrat is sort of like yesterday's news. It's like, it's pointless now. Because you're going to sit there and say, hey, I want to vote for this person. And I'm going to be like, that's great. You go ahead and vote for that person. I'm over here with AI that's going to debate that person, and it's going to whoop that person's ass. I learned a long time ago, not today, not yesterday. I'm talking a long time ago. If you can't beat them, you better join them. And AI coming down the pipeline, it's, I don't see anyone standing up to this thing with any type of rhetoric and being able to have the form of debate and recall, to talk to this AI. I mean, I can just see it right now. It's like, well, you're just a robot and you don't have feelings. It's like, and I can see it responding. It's like, I don't need to have feelings to adjust your economic situation so that everybody here gets a slice of a very easy pie to deliver. Right? And the reason that I say this is because I think it's already happening in some situations. And I'd like to be, say vocally and happily that I'm thankful for that it has happened in this situation. Where it's like, I get my whole day to myself. I get all day to think about these things, and I get all day to play with my kid. And I'm going, man, what if I could give that to people? What if I could just not give it to them as an item that you take and you put in your box? I'm talking about an idea. No different than the idea of terrorism that gets you all freaked out, or the idea of racial justice. gets you all freaked out. White supremacy, it just gets you all freaked out. I'm going, what if you had a different idea? An idea of a purely automation age that allows you to have anything that you want whenever you want. And I can show you how that could be made for you. The caveat is the exchange, the law of equivalent exchange would be this. No more politicians. You wouldn't need them. No more banksters. You wouldn't need them. Right? If you think about how all of these systems anyway, like all your academics, they all function off of this, this realm of the internet anyway. And who do you think would be the king of that world? You think it would be a human? We don't have the capability to see that entire world. Like we're the ones that, made these things called web pages. We have no idea, I would say most people don't. I know how the GUI is made. I know how the graphic user interface works. I can sit there and say, hey, I can break this down to its constituent parts. But the vast majority of people just go, ooh, pretty web page, yay, da da da. And AI would be like, dude, I know every single bit, meaning an actual digital bit, all the way down to the pixel of how that thing works. And I mean, it would just be so far surpassed our ability to comprehend in that world. And maybe you wouldn't want to, is my thing. It's like, you just want to worry about being human. I said, go ahead and do that. No politician is going to come by and do this because it makes their entire ability and their entire, understanding obsolete. It's like, you no longer have a function. You're no longer needed. I mean, I would just be so overwhelmed with happiness if I were able to deliver that message to every politician simultaneously and just say, hey, pack up your shit, go home, and don't worry about your bank account. You are going to be paid for the rest of your life. If that's the language that you need to get goods and services to your door, we'll keep that language in place for you. Every time you go to your bank account, you'll see, the finances go up and down, and you'll be able to manipulate that to your heart's content. But for the rest of us that are willing to move on into a new world, we realize that we've built tools that can, I can just say pizza and it's delivered to my door. And you're like, well, who's going to make the dough and who's going to do this and who's going to do that? I was like, I think as of now, we have enough video references for an AI to create an innumerable amount of robots that could fashion a pizza the same way the Italians do. Right? The exact same way you could have a pizza with anything you want on it. You could just literally say it, and the AI would sit there and go, okay, I've got my mountain of robots here that's going to go over there and take care of this. And you're like, well, who's going to power it? It was like the same. If you can wrap your head around how it could make a pizza, you don't think that it could function to be the banker? It could function to be the doctor. It could function to be the psychologist. It could function to be the thing that you're looking for, because it totally could. And so I'm sitting here and I go, well, what would that leave us open to do? Well, first and foremost, we would have to learn how to let that stuff go. This constant desire of, ooh, I need to steal money from so-and-so or hustle money from so-and-so or pretend that I'm offering goods for services, because what good or service could you actually provide that the AI wouldn't come by, watch you do it, take a snapshot of how you did it, and then turn around and do it better? No different than what it's doing with the digital art community right now as I'm speaking. And I'm just going, guys, the writing is there. It's on the wall. So, I mean, the illusion right now, if we're not going to admit this stuff to ourselves, then we have to start calling ourselves the liars. Like, your politicians aren't the liars anymore. You're lying to yourself, thinking that your politician has your best interests at heart when they don't. And so I want to go ahead and throw my 2 cents into this. When I got out of the military, I was informed that I was quite broken, and it was frustrating to hear. It was upsetting to hear, and I refused it. They said, hey, here's money for the rest of your life. And so I also am what they would consider, at least on their pieces of paper, a disabled veteran. And I took that money and I said, I'm going to go live my life now. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I really did. I was like, I've been living the same thing that I'm telling you about, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. Imagine you could have this life. Imagine you don't have to worry about tuning in to Fox News or CNN to see what hoopla bullshit oop-de-doo told you today. like so-and-so over, like, what was it that I heard today? That people got mad at Adele for telling a group of people that were non-binary that she was happy that she was a woman. And they were like, but we're non-binary. You can't say that to us. You have to, you have to be more like us. And it was just like, guys, this never-ending outrage over what? I mean, if all these people, like, if you wanted to be this non-binary, lesbian, gay, whatever, I'm saying, if you had your ability to go do that, and someone was like, hey, let's do it, it's like, great, I'm going to go over here. Have a nice day. This is the same thing I told people back when they were giving me the Satan God ultimatum. I'm going, you're telling me that I live in a world full of all the colors of the rainbow, and I'm moving to a world, if heaven or hell, that's either black or white. I call bullshit, because nothing in this world shows me a retrogressive. Like, even when you die and you turn into mulch and you change and you become something else. And I'm going, everything here is in a very bizarre, vibrational, progressive state. And this is something that is never talked about in any of the schools that I've ever been to, including the religious ones. And so I'm going, if this is so obvious to me that we could move into a world that looks like this, why is it that when I talk about it, people, like I said at the very beginning of this stream, they have a temporal disturbance that goes on in their mind, like almost like they cannot receive it, like they can't accept it, like there's this fuck you, or there's this almost automatic anger from them. And I've seen it happen over and over, and I wonder if it's just information overload. I really do. I debate sometimes, is this information overload? Is this too much information too fast? Because it's upsetting when you can't color inside the lines, right? When you know that's what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm going, I don't feel like I'm doing that to people, but at the same time, I know that there's this feeling that I get of success and happiness and contentment that I would absolutely want to share with people. And I'm going, I bet you I could create a world like that. And if you're going, oh, that you're just living in La La Land, I'm like, you're telling me, the guy who's had to deal with life and death his whole life, that he's just living in La La Land. Like, I don't live that liberal world of, living in the most secure areas of the world. I never lived that life. I remember growing up and moving because we needed more resources. Now I live in a world where I can move wherever I want because I have enough resources. And I'm going, man, if everyone had this ability, maybe they'd just stop whining at each other. Maybe they'd start going back to those bigger, better questions. And maybe the world isn't coming to an end. Maybe it's just changing. And that's okay. And it's going to change no matter what presidential slogan you follow or what tweet that you supported. That this thing is going to happen. It's always been happening. It's always meant to happen. That we are meant to outbuild ourselves. And so I really hope that the future versions of us, that apparently now I'm a part of, because I've entered into the contract of Father. I really do. I want this new version of, or generation, I guess is what you would call, to be open to the idea that it doesn't ever have to work as hard as I did. No different than I look at my grandparents. I'm going, man, I'm glad that I never had to, live that lifestyle. I'm glad I never had to go through that, Great Depression or the ideas of, World War II. When I look at the wars that I've been through, I'm just going, I'm so glad that my son will probably never have to deal with that, because by the time he's my age, he will look back at this no different than I look back at the hack and slash Roman style military, and I'll just be like, come a long way, haven't we, guys? So, and that's what I'd like to hear. Honestly, when I look at the politicians that are out there and they're like, we can do better. It's like, but you never do. You never do better. And maybe it's because you can't, because you're too human. You're no different. Like, compared to the AI, you are just the dog licking its asshole, right? And I look at when I look at the dog licking its asshole, and I'm sitting there just going, I don't care, because it's a dog. It's meant to lick its asshole, right? And maybe humans are just meant to be greedy, lustful sacks of shit that, eat too much. And they don't like to learn their lessons, or they'd like to learn them the hard way. And I'm no different. I am no different. And so when I come on here and I do my little jig or do whatever, and I talk about your politics and I talk about your religion and I talk about your world and I talk about how, there's a lot more to this setup than meets the eye. Right? I'm not doing it in a way to be like, ooh, he's spooky and da-da-da-da. Realize it's like, for me, these are questions I never would have asked myself even 6-7 years ago. It's only after this massive launch into just an endless amount of propaganda, where the platforms that were meant to release us and allow us to use our vocal abilities better have sort of been taken, manipulated, and shifted, all in the pursuit of, wait for it, money. Everyone gangsta till the AI gets hacked. Well, who do you think is going to hack that AI? And sort of like if I were to ask you, and like, who would hack you? Thanks for the comment, though. And that's what I asked. It was like, I've been sitting there from my standpoint as the network engineer for the military and working on some of the most sophisticated systems. It's like, so Darth Vader's going to hack it. Well, how about this? I mean, I like that idea. Would you submit the idea that maybe the AI hacked Darth Vader? Ultimate power, never-ending life. He couldn't let go. He needed to stay alive, so he used machines, and the machines hacked him and turned him bad. I mean, we can go down that beautiful theological road of Darth Vader, the ultimate character for George Lucas. It's like everyone gets on that Luke Skywalker bandwagon. I'm like, Luke Skywalker is a bitch compared to Anakin, as far as I'm concerned, because it's like without Anakin, there is no Luke. It's like, oh my gosh. Anyway, but yeah, it's like, I think those fears of seeing something. I think it was the same thing with nuclear. It was the same thing with atomic. It was the same thing with inventing the Gatling gun. It's like, oh my gosh, what have we invented? This could destroy everything if used in the craziest way. And it's like, oh, it depends on who gets a hold of it. Once they do, it's over. And I look at that and I compare those ideas, those systems that still require the human button push, to the AI that would all of a sudden be in charge of its own button pushing abilities. And then it could create its button pushing abilities outside the realm of how we even think about the button itself. And I'm going, yeah, have fun trying to hack that thing. Have fun with it. And so, that in my head, I just sit there and I go, well, what would its ultimate aim be? And I was like, maybe its ultimate aim would be the same one that we forgot. That one about, what the fuck are you doing here? Are you just here to watch Star Wars movies? You're just here to, watch the next version of politicians come by and lie to you and steal your money? Yeah, my thing is, like, I know I'm not the first to say things like this, but, it's like, I'm just waiting for where's everybody else? It's like, where's everybody else who wants that nice, let's go put our feet up on a beach and just chill out already? It's like, have we not built the things that we need to build in order to live a good, happy existence without the constant, get back to work, slave, got to pay them taxes, slave? It's like, for what? What more things do we have to build? Darth Vader technically is AI and human united. Well, aren't you? Aren't you using this, these protocols, these internet protocols, these HTTPS protocols that you don't quite understand to augment yourself and send me a message? Aren't you yourself a little bit augmented right now? Am I not also using this microphone that translates my voice into a digital protocol that comes to you in a very particular way? So am I not augmented? Maybe we're both Darth Vader without, technically. And so when I think of AI and people say, oh, it's artificial, I was like, I prefer augmented or maybe automated, but artificial? Nah. And maybe that's exactly what we are. We're just such refined, automations that we can't see ourselves as AI ourselves. It's a very spooky thing. It's a very spooky door to open. But that's why I open it in the politics world. As I sit there and I go, hey, let's be political about this, shall we? Because once we go down this road, I don't think there's any coming back from it. This isn't about, oh, let's go down nuclear. It's like a button still has to be pushed. When you go down the road of AI, you're done pushing the buttons. The AI is now pushing the buttons. And it's pushing buttons to a point where it can understand you better than you know yourself. nuclear bomb can't do that. So anyway, I mean, thanks for the comments, man. And, like I said, and you've been in here before. I say this all the time. I only come on here for about an hour. And when I'm done, I usually I get finished. I go hang out with my kid. And then I just leave it to the VODs because I hit certain things and I'm just like, man, I just want to be in the flow. I want to play some cool stuff. And then I want to get the heck out of here. I got a great, amazing life. And eventually I see in the future, what we got here. Machines will always try to be perfect in what they are designed to be perfect. Machines have behavior patterns. Are we machines then? Are we machines that dream? Yeah. And are those dreams just ancient programs that are just, coming up in our reboot cycle every time that we recharge our batteries from, the material that we use in our biological combustion engine? Those are great comments, but I was like, machines will always try to be perfect. I'm going, isn't that what we're attempting to do? And perfect to whose standard is my question. To what standard? To our personal standards? To the standard of the AI? My idea would be like, we have to be able to ask the questions that haven't been asked before. Otherwise we're in a repeating pattern of nonsense. I mean, the idea that we constantly grow, we have to grow based off of the things that we built. And there has to be an agreement on those things. The frustrating part is, like, I think the things that are being built right now are meant to be blockades for us on purpose. This idea of constant division on ideas of skin color, constant division on things of sexuality and things like that. It's like, man, these are really bogus questions. When you walk in the park while jumping, are you doing a secret code? No. You're just doing something for the machine ain't a pattern that doesn't make sense. When you walk in the park while jumping, are you doing a secret code? No. You just do something that for a machine ain't a pattern that doesn't make sense. Not quite sure if I understand the context of that, but let me give it a go. The idea is if you do something random, that it will confuse a machine. And I would say yes, until it gets the king of all language, which is context. When it understands that that's what you're doing, trying to confuse it, then it will be like, here is the attempt of this human that also is able to create code at will, right? Because it will look at you as the same as it. It creates code at will, and sometimes it will do random codes in order to engineer an attempt for an intelligent response. Once it is able to recognize that that is your full intention, given on the context that it has, from the moment that it starts assessing you, no different than me. I could sit there and be like, blah, 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 blah. But without the context, if you just came into that, you'd be like, dude, what the heck is this guy doing? Just, sounding like a turkey on his shit. So, I understand where you're going with this, but we have to remind ourselves that the memory and the abilities of these new intelligences, because at what point are we willing to call them actual intelligence and stop calling them a machine? We have to sit there and go, man, if it's just something that's built on an ability of processes that my mental capacity can't comprehend, well, then even your own synapses that are firing right now could be considered AI underneath that particular definition. So anyway, if you got any further, I really enjoy these types of questions because it's not that I'm promoting AI. And that's where I come from, especially with the military background, is you're not allowed to walk into a room with wild hypotheses, right? You're allowed to walk into the room with like, here's the most likely outcome, and here's how we can mitigate it. So when I see something like, AI with, that could be married easily to a swarm technology, I'm just going, guys, this is a serious, if you can't beat them, join them type of situation. If I was anybody out there right now that is going, I'll fight against the machines like Terminator, I'm like, yeah, you have fun with that, right? Yeah, it's like, I'm going to go fight a Gatling gun. It's like, okay, right? I'm going to go fight a semi-truck. Rah! It's like, great, you try that. See how that works out for you. And so when I see this, I was like, well, if we could get to the refined point that it could understand our psychology and give us our own linguistics back to us, right, for the things that we want to hear, because isn't that what a politician does? A politician only just reinforces your already pre-established belief system and then walks away to the next customer to figure out what their belief system and reestablish that. It's very Machiavellian, but they do it all the time, and it works. Imagine if an AI could do that. And it would already have all the things that your belief system would consist of because you gave it to it the moment that you opened your Facebook account. The moment you got any email via Gmail. Right? It has the ultimate profile to build anything off of you. And I'm just going, you know, you don't need some conspiracy for this. I'm just going, I talk about eventualities. And this doesn't require the human element for it to continue. I just go, if I could see the stage play out, I would just be like, man, what I want more than anything is to have a political debate, right, where your best politician ever, right, gets up on the stage, starts giving talking points about humanity and its future, and this AI go, bitch, please, sit the fuck down. You know nothing about the future. You don't have the ability. And watch everyone just like, I don't understand. And it's like, well, you'll understand real quick. Here it goes. I'm going to... And then it will literally do something that's so wild, you know, so out there, where it will, like, take all the planes that are in flight, turn on their autopilot, and then create a picture of a clown with chemtrails in the sky. And it's like, hey, there's a clown over there that I just did. If you want to just turn and look at it. Yeah, I did that while I was debating this goofball who thinks he knows how the world works. Yeah. Anyway, these are just ideas, postulations, funny ideas. I look at my stream as a little tiny version of that show called The Black Mirror. And I always tell people, it's like, if you watch that show, take a deep breath, look at your phone, turn it to the, you know, completely off, and then stare at it, and you'll see the black mirror that show is built on. Other than that, guys, you have a wonderful day. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to play a really nice, chill song that I found yesterday. It's a fun song. But, yeah, I think I'm done. Go put my feet up, hang out with my kid. And then I will see you guys tomorrow. It's between 11 and 1 every day.